everybody. I'm Sean Martin. You probably know that already. And I'm flying solo for this Chats on the Road. It feels weird being without Marco. He sends his best, but we have a lot going on leading up to the week that is RSA Conference San Francisco, USA 2023. And one of the things we like to do is talk to keynote speakers and panelists about the sessions that they have going. And we've had this conversation before with the SANS team, and we get to do it again this year. It's been a couple years with something, I don't know, a pandemic or something happened in between. But we're excited to be back on location in San Francisco and excited to have this conversation again with part of the SANS team. We were able to rally Katie and Johannes. Thanks both for taking the time to share with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
And a shout out to Heather and Ed, Heather Mahalik and Ed Skoudas. Best to them. We'll see them in person at this session. Before we get into what we're going to talk about, though, a few words from each of you. I think for those who listened to the previous ones, they know who Katie and Johannes are, but new guests listening may not know. So, Katie, a few words about what you're up to and your role and why you like being part of this session.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Katie Nickels. I am a certified instructor for the SANS Institute. I teach the cyber threat intelligence course, and I dual hat. I'm also a director of intelligence operations at Red Canary. So I get 2 organizations on my name tag at RSA this year, and it's really fun. This is my 3rd year joining the panel with my SANS colleagues, talking about the most dangerous new attack techniques. I just enjoy it because I get to be on stage with a bunch of very smart colleagues talking about techniques that we think the community really needs to pay attention to. So excited to be here for my 3rd year, and this time in person. I started out virtual, which wasn't as fun.
but necessary, and we're thankful we had that. And you've been on talking about many things, a lot of which was rooted in your previous life at MITRE ATT&CK, and obviously plays well into the stuff you're doing with threat intelligence and threat research and things like that. So I'm sure that'll be part of what we talk about today as well. But before we do that, Johannes.
Yeah, my name is Johannes Ullrich. I'm the Dean of Research for SANS.edu. That's our accredited college here at SANS. And as part of the research partner, I'm looking at forward, what's going to happen next, what's happening now. Also trying to sort of more quantitative measure some of the threats that we're exposed to. Part of this is also our Internet Storm Center that we are running now for over 20 years now. So it's, as far as InfoSec goes, a pretty old effort that we have. I really like our panel that we always have at RSA, because the challenge in putting something together for this panel is always trying to find something that's applicable but also forward-looking. We're not trying to be too speculative. We're not sort of doing the FUD kind of what may be coming that everybody should be scared of, but it's never going to really happen. And if you actually look back sort of over the last 10 plus years that we have done this panel in one form or another, we were actually right pretty often kind of with things that then really took off a couple of years sort of or a year after we had that particular panel.
Yeah, and I remember the other time we spoke that it's a group of you that pulls us together. I don't remember how big it is. I know it's just the 4 of you that are on the panel presenting, but there's a lot of work that goes into pulling this together. And obviously, if you're doing that work, you're bound to get things right. But talk to me a little bit about the process through which the material comes together that you then present. Or maybe, actually, I should probably step back. What are you presenting so people have a sense of what we're talking about in the first?
Yeah, so the panel's on the 5 most dangerous new attack techniques. And it's interesting because that title, when I first joined the crew 3 years ago, I was like, that's intimidating, right? If anyone in cybersecurity, you're you get to talk to potentially hundreds or thousands of people about one most important new dangerous attack technique. That's a tall order just to even figure that out. So generally, I think we start a couple months in advance. We hop on a call, we start to brainstorm a little bit. Of course, before those calls, I don't know about Johannes, but myself, and I imagine Heather and Steve are our co-panelists as well, start to get nervous and you're like, oh gosh, what technique should I choose? My approach, I think, is a little different than some of the other panelists, which I think actually makes for a cool panel. I tend to focus, and Johannes lives in this area as well. Like, I tend to focus on things that are really dangerous because they're rising in prevalence. Like, I'm not always going to be the person, or usually I'm not going to be the person who's like, oh, there's some new, special red team technique that we've seen once. Like, I'm going to be like, hey, there's this thing that's maybe been lurking for a few years. This year, we've seen it start to rise. And like, this is a thing that's dangerous because of its new prevalence. So that's how I think about it. And Johannes, I'm curious if you have a similar perspective or not.
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Sort of, it's there already, but it's going to be really big and you better get ready for it. And I think the other interesting part about this panel is that we all are sort of talking shop about what we are really doing every day. So it's not to say anything against vendors, but the product we really have to sell here is how are you going to protect yourself next year? What should you really get ready for? In sort of also a hands-on way. Like what we usually offer is very practical, hands-on advice. These are the things that you should be looking out for. And this is also how you look out for them, how you recognize them, and potentially how you defend against these threats. All of our presentations always try to close with sort of that defensive slide. We don't really say, hey, the world is falling and the sky's falling and there is no defense, pack up and go home. That's not our attitude. We really want to say, hey, there's actually something that's not really all that difficult that you can do to defend yourself against this new threat.
And remind me, there are 4 of you and 5 most dangerous threats. Do you each pick one and then you collaborate on a 5th, or how does that all come together?
Kind of depends year to year. I think what the late Alan Peller told us is no one cares about the number. Like, it's supposed to be 5, but like sometimes we fudge it. This year I actually had 2 that kind of worked together. So this year I got 2, and it's tough. The person with 2,
Congratulations.
yeah, it's rough because we all get the same time. So I have to talk about 2 techniques, not just one. But mine work together. I'm not going to give them away. People have to come, but I'll say that they're really prevalent or starting to be prevalent initial access techniques that I think people need to pay attention to. So I got 2 this year.
And that's definitely sort of a theme here that, we try to cover the top 5 or whatever the number is we put. I think the past exams also mentioned 7 and such. So we had different numbers there. Katie got lucky this time in getting to cover 2. But it's really the top most prevalent, interesting, exciting attacks to talk about. That's sort of how we come up with these. And for myself, you always look at, what are you doing every day? I look at like our volunteers that provide us with data, and so what they're seeing. Basically, look sort of at your larger network kind of sort of human and technical sensors that you sort of have out in the field to figure out what matters to them. And that's sort of how we come up with these techniques.
Yeah. And then Katie, you said the two you're presenting kind of connect at some level. Do you find, generally speaking, that the 5 or the 6 or the 7, whatever the number is, are cohesive, or are they all over the place? One year might be total human elements, social engineering, and also deep hardcore networking, or IoT versus ICS, or how does, maybe looking back on past years without giving away this year's stats or techniques, what does that picture look like? I'm trying to get a sense for, if I'm sitting in the audience, am I told a connected story of 5 things, or am I told 5 individual stories?
It's interesting. What we usually find is that I think this year we're sort of in pairs. Like Johannes and I are a little more on the like prevalence rising side, and then Steve Sims and Heather Mahalik are more on the forward-looking side. And so we find that there are often, connections between them, but I think what's cool about this panel is that we each bring a very different perspective, right? Heather works, on mobile technologies at Celebrate. She's also really passionate about like personal family security, right? Steve Sims works on the offensive side. So he kind of brings a slightly different, more like, how can adversaries use technology to create exploits, that kind of thing. Whereas I think, Johannes and I bucket us together, right? I'm of the, along with the Internet Storm team, I'm like, let's look what's happening day to day, go from there. So I would say it's not going to be one cohesive story, like 1 through 5. But I think people will start to see themes and commonalities. And, I know Heather and Steve will kind of build on each other for their techniques.
And
Yeah,
that's
my
really sort of
apology, because I said Ed, but it's Steve that's
Ed's moderating. Ed Scotus is our moderator, so he's there too.
He gets the fluffy, easy job.
Oh,
He
yeah.
asks the hard questions, you get the answer.
And that's the interesting thing. Steve's our new addition this year, and he's very offensive. That's what he lives, what he breathes. I myself more defensive person. I think, Katie, I would also put you in sort of the defensive blue team kind of bucket here. So by having all these diverse viewpoints really on where the industry is going, and that really gives us very different topics. When we coordinate, it's really more about not covering the same thing, and that not two of us are covering the same thing, but we're not really sort of artificially trying to impose a theme that everything has to fit into a particular theme, because everybody has their own idea on what's important.
I was wondering, because the conference itself has a theme, which is Better Together this year, I believe. And I suspect a lot of the submissions for talks and panels kind of had to fit, maybe I don't know if they did or not, but probably had to fit to some degree in that theme to kind of line up with things. Doesn't sound like this is the case for this panel. It's whatever the Storm Center sees, right?
Well, Storm Center is all about being better together. That's sort of the community really that deploys these sensors, and really that's sort of very how we learn from each other.
Can you describe the center for folks that may not be aware of it?
Yeah, so the Internet Storm Center, it's really sort of two parts. One is what originally came sort of out of an effort that I started called D-Shield, which is basically volunteers that are running sensors for us that detect attacks. Honeypots now mostly. We also had some simpler sensors in the past. So it's a big database, going back 20 plus years of what those sensors saw and sort of how attacks evolved over the years. The second part to it is it's sort of that human part where we just have people write in and say, I saw this in my network. Is it good? Is it bad? Am I compromised? And then we have volunteer handlers that really look at the data, that write about it. Every day we write what we call a diary, because back when we started, there were no blogs. But about what these volunteers saw in their network, sometimes about the submission that we received. How do you analyze this piece of malware? What does it mean? How to defend against it?
And I will say, +1 for Internet Storm Center diaries is a really useful resource. My team at Red Canary, we use them all the time. And a lot of times it will be like one of the leading sources of like, hey, there's this weird thing, or like it's the one source we can find that's talking about some weird binary and making sense of it. So anyone who's a defender who doesn't follow Internet Storm Center already, definitely check it out. And I can say that because I'm not officially affiliated with them. So, and it's free.
There you go.
Thanks.
Well, we'll be sure to get that link from you, Johannes. We'll include it in the show notes for folks to sign up and grab that. Talk to me about the format. So 5 different sections presented. Is there expected audience engagement to ask like a double click on some of the things that are shared? What's that format look like?
So we try to source, Ed tries to kind of source questions in advance and do that in different ways. So it's kind of tough with such a big, audience to source live questions. So we sort of try to anticipate, or, I think some years we go to like students, right, Johannes, sourcing different questions. And then we each get 6 minutes approximately. If you time us, you'll see we almost always go over, and Ed doesn't yell at us too much. But then we try to reserve time for questions as well.
Yeah, and we try to make it a little bit interactive with those questions, and of course, start a conversation really that hopefully will then continue after the presentation, where people sometimes come up to us and ask additional questions, or also the audience amongst themselves will further discuss what they just heard.
So clearly, red team, blue team, ops folks, who all should be in the room with you?
I think everyone, all of those folks, of course, Johannes and I are going to have a little bit of a bias towards defenders. Steve talking to the red teamers, Heather many years, Heather's the one who tries to get us to think about like our day-to-day life, right? We always use our phones for everything. What's our vulnerability there? So I think Heather's is applicable to everyone, anyone in their personal lives. I think leadership, that's another thing I always try to think about is, the CISO types or the leaders, people who are making decisions. Like I get 6 minutes to talk about something. And what is the thing that I think they absolutely need to know about? And I think we all take that seriously. So we try to, I think we all have a mix of like trying to make our concept really accessible, our techniques accessible at a high level, and then maybe like a little bit of a deep dive. I have a little bit of, the example command line for one of the threats that uses my techniques, like deep dive a little bit, but then zoom back out, trying to make it accessible for a big audience.
Yeah, that's not to give too much away, but I think this year Heather will be really great because she makes some of those technical issues really personal and why do they matter? That's what we always try to sort of get across.
Yeah, and as you both know, the five most today that you're presenting in a couple of weeks won't be the same five the next day, or certainly not the next week or a few weeks after that. So, do you also try to instill a sense of understanding? So, regardless of what the topic is, more of a best practice around this type of technique rather than this specific technique, so the teams can apply a general best practice to their program versus, hey, I got to go back and solve for this one particular threat.
Absolutely. I would say that, we each have to have the defensive, the mitigation guidance. And as much as we can, I think we each try to think about the category of threats, right? So minor initial access techniques and the, defensive and mitigations I'm giving, talking about how they'll apply more broadly, right? That these aren't just going to work, narrowly on the techniques. And, I think we're all, one of the cool things about being on this panel in particular is we're all instructors, we're all teachers. And so I think anyone with that teacher mindset, like you always want to teach your students to fish. So I think we always try to inject, like I'll start talking about my techniques with, hey, right, defenders have gotten better. Here's what we're seeing shifting in perimeter defenses. And that's led to this. So trying to educate people, not just how do we come up with these techniques, but how could you think about this in the future? Like the kinds of things to watch out for in adversaries. So as you say, right, the average person can try to pick up on what the next technique is the next week or the next month.
Yeah, good part of this is while the techniques change, some of the defensive techniques actually remain fairly constant and sort of trying to focus back to the basics when it comes to defenses.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And Johannes, I know as we were prepping, the topic of supply chain came up, and I had the fortune of speaking with Alan Friedman from CISA about SBOMs and supply chain and software security. And I forget, there's like 25, 30 sessions at RSA Conference this year. And he said, I'm sad mine didn't get selected. my presentation didn't get selected, but I'm thrilled that the work that CISA and others in the industry have done to raise awareness for supply chain has done so well that there are that many people talking about it in a meaningful way. So your thoughts on supply chain? I don't think it's directly related to your session, but it's an important piece, right?
Yeah, I think the complexity about supply chain it's often overlooked is it's not just about the components that make up software, but it's also about the processes that are being used to create that software. I think it was last year, 2 years ago, at this keynote panel, I described developing these days as taking a bunch of libraries and wrapping it with duct tape together. That's at least sort of how I develop a lot of my software these days. It's not just about the components, but also about how do you do the wrapping and who does the wrapping. How do you sort of control the entire process? That's really what a lot of this is about. And that's one of the hidden complexity here of the supply chain as well.
Yeah. And Katie, I know you have not just double duty in the SANS panel, but double duty at RSA itself. You have a threat intelligence and response, I think, session as well. I don't remember what the official name is, but tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, both of them are on Wednesday. So I'm going to be very busy Wednesday, but it'll be fun. Yeah, I got together with a couple of colleagues that I admire so much, Wendy Whitmore from Palo Alto, Leslie Carhart from Dragos, and then Lily Hay Newman from Wired is going to be our moderator. So we're going to be talking about real world stories of incident response and threat intelligence. You know, all of those of us on the panel have been involved in incident response in lots of different ways. And so talking about, some of the things we've seen, some of the lessons learned, some interesting stories, cautionary tales. And, one thing that building on Johannes's comment on supply chain, one thing I'm hoping to inject there is talking about supply chain with the recent 3CX compromise, right? That compromised a voice over IP software. I think that was late March, early April. Time is fleeting. But I think it's pretty interesting to talk about just how challenging it is to detect those compromises. Whether it's the libraries Johannes is talking about, if someone's inserting there, or in this case, Mandiant's still investigating what happened in 3CX, but right, malicious DLL files coming from trusted VoIP agents. And how do you challenge those assumptions we all have that, right, this is a trusted binary, nothing bad should be coming from this until it does. So I'm excited to kind of, dive into that incident, other recent incidents over the years, and really just give people, especially those who haven't done incident response or those who do, I think there'll be lessons for everyone on what to watch out for as you're doing these incidents, and maybe some fun stories of weird things we've seen as well.
The weird things. We all show up for the weird things.
Yeah, I'm really excited to listen to what Katie and the others have to say about 3CX. I think that company struggled initially a little bit with the incident response, but now they're pretty open, and it's sort of back to the better together kind of motto. The more you share about incidents like this, as painful as it is, the better everybody else will get, and hopefully you too, because you get the feedback as you're making this public.
Yeah, it's easier said than done many times, but if you have somebody leading by example, I think initially we tend to point fingers and say they're not doing it right, but I think we're starting to turn that corner and say, look, they didn't do it perfectly, but look how well they did and how much better we are because of that.
It is really hard, and I think just with 3CX, the same day 3CX sort of broke, we had people report malware on our website, and I shrugged it off because it happens all the time, because we write about malware and anti-malware tools are picking up on it, but it's hard. It's hard, and I think that's often overlooked sort of from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I appreciate about RSA Conference is they give people like you a platform and a space to share what you've done. A lot of this work you're doing a lot of times is not for any benefit of your own, right? You're not getting paid to do this necessarily. And we see volunteers and researchers all over the conference bringing their hard work and their mind and translating that into a story that practitioners and leaders and managers and business folks can all absorb and hopefully build a better program through. And these two panels represent that in my mind, with a diverse group of folks from different backgrounds looking at things differently. They're all teachers, instructors. Another a mix of IT and OT and ICS, and of course we have the media in there, kind of helping to shape a story even more, perhaps. And I mean, super cool. And I'm grateful for the two of you for the work you do. I'm thrilled to have this conversation as a follow-up to our previous ones, and hopefully we'll do it again next year, RSA 2024. Any final thoughts, Katie, before we wrap?
No, just appreciate the conversation, and yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone at RSA. Please, if you have time, joining our panel would be awesome. If you don't, it's recorded. You can watch it later. But looking forward to engaging with everyone and hearing about the threats that are relevant, and yeah, figuring out how we can all better protect against them.
Yeah, same here. Hope to see many people at RSA. And like I said, we try to start a conversation with this panel. So let us know how well it works for you. If you can't attend the panel, no big problem. Sometimes the smaller sessions are actually more fun, I have to admit. But I hope still lots of people will show up for the panel, and let us know what you think about it and how these threats affect you.
I thought thought I was going to have to say, okay, we won't publish this until after the panel, but no, we're not going to do that. No, we want people to visit you, meet you, and learn from you, and hopefully they'll thank you as well, like I want to do again. So everybody listening, there'll be links to the two sessions, the two panels we discussed today, the SANS panel and Katie's threat intelligence response panel, and link to the Internet Storage Center for the diary, right? The daily diary, I think it is, and anything else Katie and Johannes want to share that would help folks prepare for the session. isc.sans.edu. There we go. So we'll include that link for everybody. All right. Thank you both, and we'll see you there. Good luck with your panels, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.